Hi, I'm Anirvan Sen, and I'm the Managing Director for Chazey Partners in Asia, Middle East, and Africa. I have been involved with the shared services journey for more than 20 years now, and have been both at the receiving end, on the other side, at the buyer side of things, for many, many years. And one of the things that kind of fascinates me or draws me to this industry is what I call the cross-cultural experiences. People in the past, um, you see that remnants of that even today, but they would essentially go for pure labor arbitrage, pure cost arbitrage to get shared services or work done from a lower cost country. But they often forget that it is not just getting something done at a lower cost. There's so much more that could be obtained from going the shared services route, whether it's getting consolidated efficiency, whether it's getting innovative ideas from different cultural backgrounds, or whether it is pure standardization that you want to drive through the organization. I mean, there are many facets to the shared services. Interestingly, one of the work that I'd done in my past life back in General Electric, when I used to be the strategy leader for Middle East and Africa for corporate finance, global business services. When I'd moved in from Europe, the landscape that we had was we used to operate in about 8 countries and had about 70, 80 people. By the time the program that I ran finished, we were operating in about 34 countries, and we had more than 200 people in different centers. Unlike in the traditional sort of hotspots for shared services and outsourcing, where you had a critical mass or more than critical mass, the model that we had to take in Middle East and Africa was quite different. I used a strategy model by Pankaj Gemawat, one of the INSEAD professors and professors who was linked with Harvard Business School at one point in time, triple A methodology. Triple A stands for adaptation, aggregation, and arbitrage. In a lot of the countries that we operated, especially in Middle East and Africa, we didn't have the critical mass. We didn't have a number of people that was required to have a steady, stable operations. And in order to and a lot of times the people that we would hire in those countries would be local people with very little experience in international environment. So one of our first tasks that we needed to do was to adapt them to work in the GE way, and that got manifested through implementations of policies, procedures. We put in the performance yardsticks the way GE measures, and we try to infuse a lot of GE DNA in those centers. In other words, we took the first day, the adaptation for the smaller sites. For the so-called, there were certain processes like transactional processes like AP or payroll, where we didn't have enough bandwidth in the country. So we looked at possibilities of managing them remotely from another country, and that's where we used the second A, the aggregation, and created a hub for many countries, especially in Africa, where Kenya, for example, for us supported a lot of countries in sub-Saharan Africa. We had Algeria supporting some countries in the Northern African region, and we had a couple of other examples. But the idea was that to have aggregation of some of the so-called transactional level services. And then the third level, where we had some countries in the region which were more matured, the processes were more matured, we had the right kind of scales, but we knew that these countries were going through high cost of living and high increase in the cost of living in these countries like Qatar, like Kuwait, like Dubai, and where we decided to take advantage of the outsourcing model, labor arbitrage, and move the work to India. Mind you, a lot of the workforce in the GCC or the Middle Eastern countries tends to come from the Asian subcontinent. So looking at the cultural similarities, we involved ourselves to get into a labor arbitrage model. At that point in time, obviously, we didn't have any benchmarks available for the region, and we literally had to look at different opportunities, and which is, I think, where the AAA model of Pankaj Gemawat came and provided us a big help in the way we've done things. But again, as I said, it is the different aspects. It is not one recipe for all. Not all roads lead. We say all roads leads to Rome, but there are different ways to achieve it. So it was where we truly could use our experience, my experience, and to achieve something. We created something new for the region, and I still feel proud of it because we literally were one of the pioneers of so-called the outsourcing and using consolidation models in that part of the world. Um, I would say the disrupting influences, the three disrupting influences that is casting its shadow over the shared services industry, would say three. The first one is the role of social media. The second one is going to be technology advances, and the third, I would say, the data analytics. And I've already alluded to data analytics in the past. So when it comes to the social media, and this is again, interestingly, we have reached that stage where we have Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z just knocking at the doors. So what we find that a lot of people from Gen Xers are either they're not fully aware or don't feel comfortable with the social media, and they tend to dismiss of the impact of social media. But what I find increasing, then I'm talking about some of the new entrants, the job seekers, the people who are in their 20s, the amount of time they spend on the internet, on the web, just doing research on the company they would like to apply to get jobs, so on and so forth. They would like to read more comments about the companies. They would like to hear about people's experiences, so on and so forth. And I still remember one of the examples. One of my cousins who had shared with me said, "I'm not sure if I want to join this company." And I asked him why. Said they don't have much of a presence on the net. I'm like, "That's a good thing, isn't it?" And he said, "I don't know if they're hiding something or not." And that's the kind of impact social media has in our lives, or has started to have in our lives. And this is where one needs to be very pragmatic and need to take these things into account, that the way the social media is impacting the way we operate, the way we work, is immense, and one should not one should not one should not let these social media factors not be considered in their strategic decisions. So it is important, and for the people, for the practitioners, that to invest more time in becoming aware of the social media, as well as how they could potentially get impacted by the new changes or the changes that are taking place in this aspect. The second thing is, I would say, is the technology advances. I mean, even 5 or 10 years back, when you looked at your cell phones, they were very different. You could use them for making calls, some SMSs, and one or two applications. I still remember it used to be called WAP in those days, and there used to be a company called Palm Pilot, and having a palm used to be a prestige symbol at one point in time. In the people who are coming in now in the job market, when you tell them about Palm Pilot, they have absolutely no recognition at all. And this has happened because the way technology is advancing, and the processing power gets almost doubled every 2 to 3 years, are are providing us with new opportunities. I recently met an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, and he said that he's completely moved away from laptops. Um, he uses his iPad and he uses his iPhones to make his presentations. He carries them around. He doesn't even need a memory stick because everything is kind of on his cloud, and he would need them as and when he would need them. He would just download on their iPad, etc., and then make presentations based on the iPad. And that's the kind of changes people are witnessing when it comes to technology advances. I mean, also the other thing is, for example, the amount of time people um, have to wait for approvals. Now imagine you have a smartphone and you could access your application where you could put in approval anywhere through a smartphone. That would make the whole process so much faster, more efficient. The same thing would be for, if you had to make some travel reservations, you could go up to on a smartphone, access your application, and look at some of the choices that are there for the airlines, from whom you can buy the tickets, etc. And you know, all of it is gets done through a smartphone application or an iPad application. So there are the possibilities are immense, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more interfacing with these smart technologies and shared services, especially in the next 3 to 5 years. It's going to be a fascinating space. And then the last thing I said was about data analytics. And again, it's one area. There would be some people who would be moving ahead, and ahead of the curve on this one. People who would be able to get the right kind of experienced people, the mathematicians, the statisticians, but most importantly, people who also have business acumen. And that is again going to be literally called, I'm going to expand on the war on talent. People who are mathematicians or statisticians, as well as have business acumen, who are not on Wall Streets, are very few and far between. And this is where a lot of the battle is going to be fought around the data analytics of the big data in the coming years. We in Chazey actually are one of the better models of working virtually across the globe. Close colleague, he's based in London. Then David, he's based in Dublin. Phil, he's based in California. And some of the other members who are based in California or in Latin America, in Asia. We use technology tools like Skype, technology tools like cloud servers, where we manage and maintain our backups. We manage and maintain our files that we want to share within the organization. So, without these technologies, especially things like Skype, it would be very difficult for us to operate. Um, on my break time, as I would say, the things that I like to indulge in when I'm back in Amsterdam base, mind you, I travel quite a lot. I spend about 70 to 80% of the time on the road. But when I'm back here, um, I make it a point to go cycling out in the countryside. Almost every week. At least once or twice, I do about 20 to 30 miles of cycle ride in the countryside, and it just is has such an impact. It's detoxing. It gives me a lot of peace, if I may say. At the same time, it's good for the body. The other thing which I do is, once every couple of months, once every quarter, uh, we just pick up our car and drive into either in Germany or to Belgium or to France. And when we drive into France, we try to pick up a wine district and go to a vineyard and spend some time there. And yeah, apart from the travel piece, the two other things I enjoy a lot. One is cooking, and the other one is writing. And when it comes to cooking, I experiment a lot. I've got my own signature dishes and cocktails. But yeah, I mean, this is who I am. So um, I enjoyed talking to you guys in this session. Hopefully, I could share some insider thoughts, some thought leadership in the industry, and look forward to sharing another session with you sometime again in the future.